Whatever happened, it was Carissa. I think we all know that. Take much time, but we felt that it might be meaningful. You know, we don't get just leaders together that often. We thought it might be a good idea to just catch you up a little bit on some of the thinking that we're doing. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel a little bit like this baby has not quite gestated enough time to birth it or share it with you. So, but I'm going to just by faith seize this moment and open up a little bit with what I've been thinking. And most of you know I took a couple of months sabbatical this summer, and so I obviously had a lot of time to process and pray and think, and a lot of that was personal, just thinking about my own life and my own story, my own weaknesses, and letting God love on me and help me. But of course, I can't stop myself from thinking bigger picture, thinking about you, thinking about our movement, this thing that we have been, swept into in some ways. I've come to the conclusion, from that kind of space of prolonged reflection, I've come to a couple of conclusions. One of them is that we are losing this battle. I'm sad also about it. That's how we all feel. So I have these kind of dueling convictions coming out of a place of, I think, sober prayer. And I'm telling you, I feel both these things with equal veracity. And I, as best I know how, and as best I understand myself, I think that both of these convictions are devoid of ego. They really have nothing to do with me. But on the one hand, I feel a very strong sense that we are losing this battle for our cities. That whatever way that we would quantify this war we're in, frankly, this light against darkness, good versus evil, the kingdom of God versus Babylon, we're losing. We are losing. And it doesn't look good for us. It doesn't look like we're actually going to transform anything going at this rate. I feel, if any of you are sort of history buffs, I'm really fond of Winston Churchill, and I feel a little bit like Winston Churchill when he was made Prime Minister of England in the throes of World War II. Neville Chamberlain was sort of a negotiation strategist. He wanted to appease the Nazis. He wanted to make terms with them. He was considering, letting them occupy and so on. And so he was ousted. Really, Chamberlain was ousted because Churchill was such a bull, because the English people said, no, we want to fight this evil that encroaches the shores of our island. And they felt that they were somehow, the English people felt that they were somehow divinely called to stand against this great evil, even if they lost. Even if they were to go down, they wanted to go down swinging. And Churchill, who was himself like a lifelong politician, when he was tapped to become prime minister, he was driving, this is the story, if you read his biographies, he was driving to Parliament to accept his position, his placement as prime minister in this time of war. I mean, actually, it felt like the end of the British Empire. This is the end. Can you imagine sort of being put in charge of a thing as it goes, of becoming captain of a ship as it's sinking? That this is the last gasp of the British Empire, and you get to be in charge of that. You get to, you get to run it now. It's not the time you want to become prime minister. And so he's in the car, and he's got his bodyguard. He's been with him all these years, and he just says, this is a big deal. This is your moment. And Churchill looked at his longtime friend, bodyguard, and he said, this is my destiny. And he was a humble man. It wasn't about ego. It's as if Churchill felt that his whole life he'd been prepared for this one moment. Because he already knew, he had already purposed in his mind, he would not back down. And if the British people had asked him to be in charge, then they would fight. And those famous words he said when he walked into Parliament that day and stood before the House of Commons and stood before his fellow lifelong bureaucrats and politicians, and he said, "We will fight. We will never surrender. We will never give up. You ask me what my policy is. My policy is to wage war. My policy is victory. Victory at any cost. And we will fight on the beaches, and we will fight on the shores, and we will fight in the cities, and we will fight in the meadows, and we will fight, and we will not surrender. Victory at any cost." And you have to understand, they're facing impossible odds. Their Air Force is out gunned 4-1. And of course, if you know, at the time, the World War II was turning on this new sort of air field. They were outgunned, outmanned. They were losing in France. France had just been overrun. And there was really nothing left but England to take, and it was just a matter of time before the Nazis had conquered all of Europe, and then eventually what? The world. And Churchill felt that even though when he was honest and sober and looked at the mission field, he thought, we cannot win this. It's not possible. But we will win. We will prevail. Or we'll die trying. And that's why he was the right person for that moment. I feel, on the one hand, this kind of honest, sober appraisal that when I really look clearly at the city and the work we're doing, it's just a drop in the bucket. We're not actually winning. And it feels like we are outgunned. For every microchurch, there's 2 bars. For every house church, there's a strip club. For every discussion group about Jesus, there's 100 discussion groups about wickedness and abuse and rape and hatred and racism and unbelief. And yet, out of this time of prayer and prolonged reflection, I've also come away with this deep and profound conviction that we are going to win. And by the way, I don't mean that in some sort of generalized sense, that one day Jesus will win and we'll be with him and we'll win. I'm talking about us. I'm talking about the underground. I think we're going to change the world. I think this group of people right here in this room, history will tell our story. And when the history of the church is written and read, in years or generations to come, they'll talk about this time. And they'll talk about a group of people, ordinary people from all walks of life, who created a multi-ethnic movement, and who gave the church back the keys to the kingdom, and gave what the Spirit gave his own church on the first day of its birth, its power, and gave it back to them. And so I feel that conflict, I guess, in my own psyche, that on the one hand, if I'm honest, I don't think we're really having that much impact as much as we wish or as much as we'd like to imagine. And on the other hand, I just need you to hear me. I need you to look me in the eye, and I need you to hear what I'm saying, that we're going to change the world. This thing we're doing right now is going to change the world. I think that we have stumbled on something important that God wanted to do and say, and now we're a part of it. We're swept into it. And it's different enough from even my own thoughts and my own desires and my own plan and my own vision for the way things would be for me to realize that actually I've never really had hold of this thing anyway. You can't really take a tiger by the tail, and that's what this is. And we're a part of it. And none of us really are controlling it. We're swept into it. But we must serve it. We must serve it. And so I don't know when, and I don't know how, and I don't know when the tide will turn, but stay with me. And stay with each other. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years. I don't know. But I am convinced, I am persuaded that this thing we're doing, which, when you start a thing, you guard it with your heart. You have a sort of kind of shyness and a humility, like, will it work? Maybe it won't. Is it a good idea? Maybe it isn't. And you're sort of looking. I'm just talking about my own psyche. You're sort of looking quietly, kicking the dirt and looking at the ground and wondering, will anyone validate you? Will anyone come along and say, no, that's a really good idea, or good for you, or something like that? Guys, I am past that. I don't care what anyone else thinks about what we're doing. And I don't mean that in some sort of calloused sense. I just mean it isn't the right question, because we're not going to find some other thing. There is no one else to validate us. There is no one else to say, yeah, there you go, you're doing it, good for you, and pat us on the head because we're some young movement that needs some older movement to tell us that we're on the right track. But the truth is, the track we're on isn't a track anyone else is on. And so what we have to do more than anything is we have to put our gaze upon God and upon Jesus and grind toward this goal, this thing that he's called us to, together, and not forsake each other. And not turn back. And not let go of the plow. And even more, I'm saying double our bet. We'll double down on this cause, because even if we're honest, some of us have been feeling a little bit like, we'll see, maybe it'll work, maybe it's a good idea. Well, it's better than the last church I went to, so at least Brian says things that are inappropriate and sort of funny, so I'll stick around for that. And that may have been enough at first. But I'm asking you to double down with your life. Couple things that I'm learning that I think I wanted to share, and I think the staff are encouraging me to share with you. And I'm open to discussion. I know I'm not a very good discussion leader. Nothing kills conversation like me, but real talk. This is me. I say things and then I go, anybody have anything to say? And people are like, so... I said it earlier, but there's, Alan has this thing, in every seed there's a tree, in every tree there's a forest. That potential of the kingdom. In every believer there's a church, in every church there's a movement. And I think, I feel like we've pretty much proven that we are committed to the first half of that supposition. We believe every single believer can plant a church, and many of you are proof of that. We've planted unique and robust things, all ordinary people doing extraordinary things. We believe the first half of that. The problem is the second half. We really haven't had a framework or a rubric for movements. To actually say that many of you, if that succession, that line of thinking is correct, then some of you are actually supposed to be movements yourself. And maybe this is what I'm maybe being humbled by, is the idea that one movement won't be enough for Tampa Bay. The underground, whatever we are, isn't enough to reach Tampa Bay. Do we have that map? It might be useful to just have a conception of this area, as we talk through it. Here's what's happened. If somebody comes to us and they say, no, you can leave the light. I'd rather have the lights up. Yeah. If somebody comes to us and says, we want to start a ministry, we say, absolutely, let's do it, let's go, we're here for you, and we're great at that relationship. But then some of you are sort of unruly, and you don't just want to start one ministry, you start lots of things. And so you begin to form your own, you have the potential of a movement inside you, and we don't know what to do with you. So it gets awkward, because you're doing a bunch of stuff that we're doing. So then it's sort of like, wait, you're the church, you're the microchurch, we're the movement. This is weird. What are you doing over there, and why are you doing that? And so maybe some don't maybe progress that way because they want to stay loyal to this movement, whatever. But the truth is, after 7 years, where do we really have a foothold? Where do we really have sort of transformative potential and a foothold is Central Tampa. So if you want to look at, I guess, and part of what I'm realizing is we will not be able to directly service missional communities in all those places unless we start planting movements locally. So was that Deb? So you've already taken an entire island, so you need to stay focused. You need to stay focused over there. So I'm humbled by that, and I realize that really what we need is a bunch of undergrounds, We can't just have the one in this region. It's not enough. It's not enough. Furthermore, we've only thought in terms of like one ministry, and we haven't really thought about or counted or considered the work that you produce. So, one ministry might actually bear the fruit of starting a bunch of other microchurches underneath them, but to us that's just one thing, and so we service and work with you in a certain way, and I think we have to start thinking differently about that. I don't know what it is, I don't know what the number is, I'm just going to pull a number out, because we're talking about maybe 2 million, 2.1 million people in the Tampa Bay area. I think maybe something like 2,000 disciple-making missional communities, empowered, autonomous, free-thinking missional communities need to be planted in this area to really get saturation, to really affect its spirit, its state, its content, its operation, to really see transformation. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's actually more like 3,000, I don't know. I guess we won't know till we get there. But here's the problem. In our current structure, our current way of thinking, we only consider a microchurch a part of the underground if we directly serve them. In other words, if we offer them some kind of direct service, and we've got to break out of that. I've got to break out of that. Because there is no way that my little rinky-dink staff team is going to serve 3,000, directly serve and work. We're not doing 3,000 people's bookkeeping. 3,000 ministries. Where's Brooke? She had like a panic attack just now. And I don't think in the end that's even desirable. So what do we need? What we need is actually for those of you that have sort of the apostolic possibility or potential inside you and the work that you've begun to become movements yourself. We're going to need, I think, maybe 7 to 9 movements in this region that are a lot like this, a lot like what we've created here in Central Tampa. A tight-knit, multi-ethnic, empowered. We need some of the similar kind of technology. I think we probably need hubs, places where people can share resources. I think we probably need little communal budgets where grants are given out to worthy causes and worthy ministries that are working in that locality. I think we're going to need apostolic leadership, people that look other people in the eye across the table and say, yes, you can do that. And you can do it if God has called you to do it. I think we're going to need little networks of coaches. The truth is, we need all these things contextualized. So whether or not, let's say, South Pinellas County decides they need a crucible should be their decision, and they should figure that out in their own time, in their own way, as they put together their own movement. I don't even know if I've ever been to Oldsmar, but I can only assume that it's a different kind of place over there. Why would you? And someone must surely love that place and those people. And the truth is, what we're doing and what we're wanting to do, it can't reach it all. Furthermore, I think we just have to start thinking again, we have to think more just about the map itself. We have to start actually isolating like real missionaries. Because we've been haphazard, because all we've done is just experimented with this idea of what if we gave average Christians the right and the power to choose where and how they live out the church. And so we set you free, man. And you're free, and you went into all the little weird cracks and crevices and did all the little things that you wanted to do. But it might be time, as we approach our decade mark, it might be time for us to start being strategic together. And actually start breaking down our area that we really want to transform. Not just haphazard anymore, not just experimental, because we're not experimental anymore. But actually start saying, okay, let's look at it. So even Central Tampa, what if we took Central Tampa and broke it up into clear neighborhoods? And we've actually started even to begin to do this. That's why I feel like the idea isn't quite ready, but I'm letting you in on what it is we're starting to dream about and think about. And actually start breaking down our little section, which is Central Tampa, into neighborhoods and places. And you know what, guys? There are tons of places where we have nothing. We have no missional community. I don't even know if there is a sort of gospel-believing missional community. You looking for a seat, man? There's a whole row here. She looks nice. Oh, look at Marina loves you, man. Look at that. And actually, what it may take for us in this next season as a community and as missionaries is that we actually really start working together, thinking together about the coming of the kingdom. And that could mean that as you have leaders developing underneath you and they start getting a passion to just give their life to the kingdom, that we all start consulting the same map. And we start saying, listen, I see that fire in you. I see that desire to say yes to Jesus. Would you consider taking a little spot on the map where no one is? And we got to live somewhere. Everybody has to live somewhere. And maybe we need to start releasing each other to live in the places where there are not strong disciple-making, autonomous witnessing communities. And it could take some effort, it could take some understanding, but that level of cooperation I have never seen. Because here's the trick. You either create a high command and control structure where you have the autocrats that sit at the top and tell you where to go, and tell you where the small groups go, and tell you what you're supposed to study, and you do all that. And if you do that, then you can disperse people the way you want. But the problem is the people you're dispersing, the 100 small groups that you have all over the city, are totally impotent, disempowered, because they're actually not deployed by God. They've been deployed by some autocrat that thinks he's Moses. So you have a choice. You either have the high command and control in which you can deploy your troops in a sort of orderly and strategic way, or you do like we're doing, which is just like herding cats, and you just let the cats are going to go where the cats go. And praise God, look at it. It's creative, it's chaotic, it's doing its thing, it's so cool, whatever. But we suck at strategy. If we were an army, I just want you to see that in your mind for a second. Us as an army, it's like, where's the front? We're just running around, fighting people randomly, running in circles, there's no one here to fight. Okay, run back. We're all running at the same hill at the same time. Meanwhile, we're being sort of flanked. There's no direction. There's no order. And by the way, I'm not proposing that we create some kind of weird hierarchy where we have a general. I'm actually saying, what if we all, as captains, what if we all kind of sat together apostolically and said, okay, who's going to take what territory? And that level of cooperation I've never seen. I barely even thought to dream it. Because you really have two kinds of people. You have the sort of the rule followers that want to follow some autocrat, some person that's going to tell them what to do. And then you have the people like us, which don't like to follow rule followers and want to tell the rule follower guy to stick it and actually get off me. And if you start telling me what to do, I'm going to do actually the exact opposite of whatever you just said to do. That's what I'm going to do. And so we have these two kinds of people. And I know that I've collected that kind of person. I understand that's who we've attracted. That's the kind of person we've attracted. So what? We can't be strategic, we can't be intelligent, we can't be actually look at our missionary field and actually approach it with cooperation or partnership. I think we could do better. It struck me in the reading last week of Acts 2, I don't know why this really never stood out to me, but in Acts 2:42 where it says they were united under the apostles' teaching. And then I started thinking about the plurality of that word. That it wasn't one leader that they listened to. You couldn't say it was James. You couldn't say it was Peter. You couldn't say it was Matthew. It was all of them. They listened to all of them. They were people under authority, but they weren't under anyone's authority. No one person's authority. And they were inspired by those leaders because those leaders reminded them of what the Spirit had put inside them that day when they waited in that upper room and said, you must receive power to be my witnesses to the ends of the earth. And those guys had credit, they had clout because they'd been with Jesus. And so everybody listened to those guys. But the truth is, it wasn't just one leader. And that's our flaw, guys. Is we're as Americans, we're either fools for the one leader or we refuse to be led at all. And we have to find another way. We have to find another approach. And I think the thing is the plurality of the apostleship, that actually many of you are called to be apostles. Many of you have movements inside you. And those people that begin to spring up movements, we have to start working together and thinking about the map. I guess part of what I'm hoping to kind of maybe share with you or deposit in you is, would you start thinking about that? Would you start dreaming about that? Would you start thinking, have you as a microchurch leader and your own microchurch and your own development, have you thought too small? I mean, are you supposed to not just plant one microchurch that affects one demographic, but actually you're supposed to be a movement? And maybe some of you need to roll up to me, maybe not today, but in the coming weeks, come up to me and say, I'll take Oldsmar. And you know that's God. That has to be God. I'll take Oldsmar. And then even within our own little subsections, we've got to start looking at neighborhoods and saying, I'll move. There's already believers, there's already microchurches in the place that I live. I'm willing to move. And some of you, by the way, you live in like apartments or rentals. You could just pack up, you know that, right? If you're currently renting, you're a free agent, baby. Well, unless, of course, that place that you've rented is a place you've been called to. And God has actually put you there, deployed you there. So unless your current living situation is somehow integral to the mission that God's called you to, I want you to start thinking of yourself as free agents. Furthermore, we have got to push down leadership more than we ever had before. We've got to speed up the pipeline, the process. And however long we think it takes to make a proper leader, we need to cut that in half because this is wartime. And we need reinforcements. And we're not going to get to 2,000 or 3,000 missional communities at our current clip, our current pace. And some of us need to branch off and do new things. And then there are people currently now in your ministry that just need a yes from you. They just need a push from you. They just need an encouragement from you. And I guess the last piece of my thinking, the sort of newest and weirdest and most strange thing, is something that one leader in particular is sort of pushing me on, is the idea that there may even be some churches, some traditional churches out there. Hold yourself for a second. Just hold on. Brace yourself. There may actually be some missional churches out there in traditional form who really want to plant incarnated, autonomous, disciple-making churches, and we need to start partnering with them. That I need to find a way to make peace with those guys and play nice and convene, even if there are apostolic leaders that are sort of stuck in traditional church forms. We've got to start partnering with them. And if we can find them, and if they're willing to take some territory, and say, maybe one of them will take Oldsmar, Why am I picking on Oldsmar? Is there anybody even here from that? Would be horrible if you, oh my God. But it's good though, you're there. We can move on. Let's find another desert land. Just play with you. What'd you say? Clearwater Beach, man. Yeah. Take the Scientologists on. You and the Scientologists. It's undeveloped. I don't know what else to say. I think that the research shows that when you add population to a city, when population increases, innovation increases. I guess population goes up, innovation and ideas go up. But as a counterexample, when companies get bigger, innovation goes down. This is a sort of interesting phenomenon. In fact, every time a city doubles in size, innovation increases by 15%. But when a company grows in size, innovation almost disappears. So the question becomes, how can we operate more like a city and less like a company? Because cities are living systems. They're diverse. They counterbalance each other. They exist in markets and expressions, and where there's emptiness or blue ocean, things pop up. They honor the entrepreneurial. This is, I think, closer to God's vision for what his church should be, more like a city. Maybe Augustine's idea of the city of God. We are the city of God. And we're meant to grow that way. And I think if we are to grow that way, we'll see even more creativity, even more innovation. The danger is what we don't want to happen is underground, as the network, as our movement grows, somehow we become institutionalized or we become formalized in some way. We can never let that happen. And part of that is to release control again and again and again and again and again. And I'm going to be honest with you, there was a time in my life where I thought 100 microchurches let loose in this city would make me happy. That would be enough. It's not enough anymore, because now we understand how to do that. Now we got that. We understand that that's possible, and now it no longer takes faith to believe for that, does it? Because we're sitting in it, and more. So what is it that will take faith? I said this in my seminar, our relationship with God is a relationship with the unknown. He is the great unknown one. It's that ancient document written by that anonymous monk called the Cloud of Unknowing. A relationship with God is entering into a relationship with someone who cannot be fully understood, with mystery itself. And I think about our relationship with the unknown, our human relationship with the unknown. What will happen next? How will it end? Will my microchurch grow? Will it not grow? Will it fail? Will I fail? Will I end well? Will I finish well? Will I ever find love? Will I ever succeed? All of those things that we wonder about. The thing, our relationship with unknowing is primarily a relationship of fear. What the unknown does to us is it makes us afraid. But think about it. The unknown and our relationship with the unknown is also the place of faith. The mechanism of faith only can happen in our relationship with the unknown. And we don't know. I don't know what will happen with your microchurch. I do know that God is somehow with us and among us and saying yes to us. And every little step, did I just do a Bobby Brown song? Every little step we take. It's my prerogative. Don't be cruel. You said don't be cruel. Oh man, that's got to be the end. I can't. Thoughts or questions? We don't want to take too much time. I've probably gone too far. Obviously, still undeveloped. Something we have to keep doing, talking about. Dan.
Are we redefining somewhat our conception of movement? Because in the past, we talked about the problem of having two in proximity. There's one in St. Pete, one in Tampa. That seemed to be an issue, that they were just too close, and that you couldn't have autonomy for the one in St. Pete because the one in Tampa manifested too big a gravitational pull or something like that.
Yeah. So the question is, is it a threat to these smaller startup movements when you have this more robust movement right nearby, within driving distance? Does it sound like a rain stick? It's funny. It's like rain sticks aren't really rain, but that sounds more like an actual rain stick. Did you get the mic? Okay, good. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out, Dan. I really don't. I do know that we are seeing examples that give us positive hope. So something like One Body, which is something that, Lee and his team, they're very organic, very simple, not trying to focus on any kind of clear structure except to teach a very basic discipleship pattern and release that to people. And at least according to their kind of calculation, they're pushing 200 groups right now out of their little organic network. And the truth is, all of those people that are connected in that network don't know the first thing about us. And so there's no threat there. So they're feeling like this is great and look at what God's doing, it's amazing. And we're working with their leaders, supporting their leaders, which is the way it should be. But there's no, I don't know what it was, jealousy or comparison or competition where you're going to one kind of crucible and it's kind of lame and you could just drive over here to the better crucible, and that could, I suppose, be an issue. But at the end of the day, what we need to always be saying is, it doesn't matter. Yes, if you want to go over there and do that, do that. If you want to go over there, do that. It's about, our whole frame is freedom. All our money is on freedom and the sovereignty of God. It really is. So we have to allow, as movements emerge in proximity to each other, yeah, leaders are going to move. They're going to be like, oh, I think I'd rather go to that elders group, or I think I'd rather go to that training or that movement, because you could drive to all of them. And all of us as apostolic leaders, as little movement leaders, we've got to be so open-handed with our people. And I think the only thing that could hurt us in the future is if we start being greedy and saying, don't touch, wait, these leaders are Pinellas County, you don't allow them to go somewhere else. Or asking them artificially to operate within boundaries that they don't naturally feel. By the way, some of your ministries could create movements which transcend boundaries because the people and the population you're working with aren't in one location. So we can't stop thinking like that, right? Like if you want to work with, I don't know, if you want to work with the homosexual community, homosexual people don't live in one neighborhood. If you want to work with black girls, you might say, well, anywhere there's black girls, we will go, because that's our calling, is to go there. So you can't confine a ministry like that. And they'll be sort of transmitting that, I think, throughout different movements. But there are people that still define their reality geographically. They think I'm from this place, and we've seen that. I mean, there are people, is anyone here from South Tampa? Okay, so South Tampa people, God bless you. You know, you came north of Kennedy. Congratulations. It's hard, you know. Am I right, though? There's something about Kennedy, and it's sort of like, it's a cultural thing. And I think we have to acknowledge that, recognize that. And if we really wanted to reach South Tampa, we'd have to root some movement in South Tampa. You have to. It's not about right and wrong. It's just about, that's how people feel and think about their neighborhood, about their community. So we have to acknowledge that truth. I don't know if that answered your question, but he's got a mic. He'll give it to you if you.
All right. Oh, well, I usually don't speak out to these things, so I'm going to just say it. One of the things that I struggled with is voicing out the need. So how are we going to voice out where we need people to go? Because right now we have down in Ruskin 3 underground people, but it's like it's not enough. We're praying for it to happen, but I haven't been able to voice it. I'm in my own house church, and those house churches aren't called to it, so are we going to put something in the underground for people to speak out? Like, we need to go here and call people out. So like more calling, maybe at Crucible or wherever, that would be helpful.
I think you're exactly right, and I don't know the answer to that question, but that's part of what we have to figure out, because, again, our posture towards you has always been, we're like firemen. We wait to be called upon, and we don't insinuate ourselves into your ministry, because our posture has always been to simply serve you in your calling. And a part of what I'm saying, and I appreciate you sort of noticing this, part of what I'm saying is that maybe we have underplayed our hand, and maybe we're supposed to take more of a sort of a citywide leadership role in calling out apostolic work, calling out missional work. And not just here, and not just with our people, because a lot of our people are pretty already committed. But yes, somehow making known to those that have a missionary heart where there is need, where there is gaps, where there is opening. If it's some big map that we work from, okay, follow up.
Well, there's also, like, in Waimama, there's an entire people group that has a different dialect in Spanish that is totally unreached. And if you go on the website that Curtis Surgeon, whatever his name is, has it, there's, like, this entire group that is yet to be unreached. And it's, like, not far away. It's 45 minutes away, and, like, nobody's going to those places that are, you know, Ruskin, Waimama. Like, why would you go down there? There's nothing down there.
That's
But
right.
it needs to happen.
Exactly, yeah. Well, and again, it's not for me to send, but it may be for us to, that's God's work, but it is for us to tell that story. And I think you're exactly right. So I don't know how. Again, this baby is not ready to be born, but I'm going to try to figure it out. We're pray for us. Pray for us as a movement that we would take this role, this leadership role. And again, not just people that know themselves as underground, but the missionally inclined, the missionary family of God transcendent in this city somewhere. I don't know how many of us there are. There might be 2,000, I don't know, maybe not much more than that in this, that are really like body, soul, blood, sweat, and tears committed to the kingdom. We have to tell that story, get the message out. You're exactly right. So the answer is, I don't know, but somehow, yes, we will do it. Go ahead, man.
One of the things that makes Underground unique is kind of like all the values, and we just went through all the values that makes the Underground. And I feel as we started these different movements, there can be the challenge or the tendency to maybe some groups of people prefer other values other than the other ones. And also the whole multi-ethnic thing that we have going on here can be threatened by, because we still, like, if you look at Tampa, you like segregation and all kind of stuff is still happening. So that's one of the things that I guess as we move forward, how we're able to still keep our underground movement diverse, not only the way we think, the way we look, but how we approach things, but that we don't create kind of like separation, and we're just able to empower and be true leaders for those new movements to address the specific challenge on their geographical area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think it probably has two fronts to fight that battle. One is that we, as the kind of archetype for other movements, will have to be patient with smaller startup movements. So we need to be careful not to project onto them what has taken us years to develop. And I think that's one of the dangers. We have a bunch of people visiting this weekend, just hanging out. You've probably seen some of them. And I think one of the downsides of visiting us at this stage in our development is you could feel like we snapped our fingers and all these things were here, and that's not how it started. It started with me on freaking Nebraska in Allison in 1,000 square feet. And that's you have to start small, and there has to be patience for those things to grow over time. And the other bit is that's why we need to network movements together, because we're going to need, I don't know, let's just say in Oldsmar there's a huge Filipino population. I love Filipinos. I want more Filipinos in our movement. Maybe they don't live here. We'll never see them at this crucible, but we have to network those movements together so that Filipino grace is somehow given to the whole movement. And so we do need to convene. Maybe it's once a year, maybe it's twice a year, and then we need to see ourselves as a citywide, multi-city movement. That's a part of the strength that we'll need to draw on each other. And there will be certain movements that sort of major on certain values. They're better at them than others, and we draw strength from that and grace from that, and we get better and stronger because of that. So I think there will be discrepancies in the way that values are lived out, the strength of them, but we all have to agree to them. There will be no compromising, at least not from me. If you're not down with the manifesto, then you're not one of us to begin with. So that's not negotiable. But then how those values are lived out, none of us lives all those values perfectly anyway. Amen? So individually we have grace for each other. We're going to have the same for movements.
Testing. All right. Well, thank you guys for having us out here. We're from Miami, and amen. Amen. And I can tell you that God has been trying to do a movement out there, and we feel like we're in the beginning stages, because there's a lot of Christians and pastors, church planting pastors, that are ready for this. And the key glue is relationship. Pastors praying together, working together. And I think the key thing here is microchurch. That our nation is hungry.
That's right.
For the micro experience, for the releasing of gift-oriented ministry and apostolic leaders that come together on a county level or city level. And I'm telling you guys, Miami, Broward, God is doing something, and we're here because we want to to learn from you guys in what we see as the beginning of something,
Amen.
and not have to repeat mistakes, and also be relationally connected. And what I see is that underground is basically, I think God is preparing you guys for national coaching, because this is probably the fastest way to reproduce disciples, fluid, contextual, and it goes back again to apostolic leadership that you see in Acts. You see it in Paul's church planning methodology, and it allows multiculturalism. And I'm telling you, this is the next great reformation, and it's an ecclesiastical issue. It has to do with ecclesiology, not theology. It has to do with culture. It has to do with spirit empowerment. And I want to encourage you guys to recognize what God in the last decade has been preparing you guys for.
Amen. All right, Jack, here's that $20 I paid you to say that. I'll get you later.
Hey, Brian. What's happening, man? I like your
Shoe
shoes,
dog,
man.
shoe dog.
I like those shoes.
Isn't that how you registered for this conference? As the shoe dog? He literally registered as shoe dog. They turned you off? Why did you turn him off? Did you? Why'd you turn him off?
Hello? What's happening, Anthony? Hey, Brian.
Hey, Nishu.
So, I really liked when you talked about maybe partnering up with other churches. If Honor One is a reflection of the underground in any way, like I think it's happening. Because even two of our people with Honor One, they currently go to other churches. But yet, both me and Alex see a need amongst the Asian population. If we truly want to reach out to them and here in Tampa, we see a need to partner up with other Asian churches. And there are other churches that are doing work. They are doing work of the kingdom. And so I think in ways it might be happening already. And so just wanted to affirm that. So
Amen.
yeah.
Thanks, man. Okay. John?
So this is exciting to hear. I recently heard an interview with a retired general, like a military general, and he was saying when they went to, you may be familiar with this, but when the United States went into Iraq and Afghanistan, he said for the longest time, war, felt like they know how to do battle, because you had a commanding officer, and then you had troops, soldiers, whatever. And he says it's like playing chess. So you're a strategist, and it's a player against a player, and they have pawns, and they have different players that do different things. And he said when we started playing, we realized there was nobody on the other side of the board. There was pawns making decisions as pawns, and there was rooks making decisions as rooks, and they were autonomous pieces with many vantage points, but they communicated with one another constantly. And he said, and what they said was they found that they could not fight that enemy without mimicking it. So they actually restructured entirely the way that they operated into a network of autonomous groups that functioned autonomously for, I think he said 22 and a half hours every day, and then had a place for 90 minutes where they put in everything they saw and learned, communicated, and went back for the next 22 hours or whatever. Anyway, I just had been thinking about that recently because this book, Team of Teams, came out that he wrote, and it was just very much like this similar idea of these autonomous networks functioning. Now, another thing I just wanted to add, sometimes I'll go to these community activist meetings, lots of different groups get together, and one of the things I've always appreciated there was all these people are represented from different groups, but when they come together and there's one group that has a need, so they're we have this action coming up, we need people, we need bodies there, it's a march or demonstration, or we need people there, and they'll stop and go around the room and say, all right, how many people can you bring to a group that isn't their group, and how many can you bring, And when can we check back, and how many can you? And they'll go around and kind of ask for commitments because we all have their back. But then, next time maybe it's me. And I don't know, for some reason when I sat in those meetings, I always thought, man, like this feels like what an elders meeting might really function like if a neighborhood gets together. And yeah, we do different things and function this way. But when we can kind of communicate and say, we all have, so when your group is in that moment, in that need, you have the access to a network of networks of power, manpower, and people, and effort, and minds, and whatever. And yet that might just be a point in time. And I just think the ability to be strategic of the use of all that we are, it's very, very exciting to me. I just want to say that I'm excited about it.
That's good, yeah. Yeah, there's something genius about the idea of autonomous but networked. So operating freely, units operating freely, and yet connected for some greater purpose to accomplish a whole, an ultimate goal or something like that. I think we have the autonomous down. But maybe the next step in our strategic development, our work, is to network more robustly. And I take responsibility for that. I've not exercised that kind of leadership with you, over you, because I felt that the first gesture was to establish trust. The first thing we've come in feeling is, are you going to try to control me? Are you going to try to tell me what to do? Are you going to try to get my people to come to your thing? And I think being missional people that have come in and out of churches for most of our lives, none of us want that. And I don't want to roll into a meeting with some other leader that's trying to get me to bring people to his thing, because I don't trust that guy. Because I think all in the end he's trying to do is build up his own sense of self or empire or something like that. And so we fought for the autonomy so that we could build trust for a moment like this. And you visitors, by the way, that's something to pay attention to, that it could take years to build the kind of trust and credibility with missional apostolic people before you could ever ask them to coordinate on something. But I'm wondering if it's time. I'm wondering if we have that level of trust together now where we can really network for a cause. If we could really say, okay, let's work together on some things. And I think starting with a common map, is one thing to do, but there could be other causes that we partner on. But it requires real trust. And I just want you to know that my commitment to you is the same. I don't want to interfere, but I want to put the kingdom above any of our smaller callings. The fullness of the kingdom is greater, can we admit, than the particular calling that we have said yes to in our microchurches. And we must, in a very real sense, at some point, when we trust each other, bring into subservience our specific call to the general call of the kingdom and of reaching our city. And it could be time, it could be time to start operating like that. Just maybe one more or two more, just maybe Dave.
I'm really ridiculously excited about this. I think this is a good representation of who we are in a bigger sense. I have a practical question. Can you speak to time frame on this? Like when, just
especially
in your head.
Especially for you, yeah. St. Pete. I was just thinking I don't want to rush it, so I was thinking maybe next week. I'm learning to be patient, so maybe middle of September. Is that okay with you guys? Lucky for you, I don't really know what I'm talking about yet, so I've never had a clap for my ignorance before, but that's Yeah, it's going to take a little while. I think we have to really think. So if we're talking about a map, for example, I think we have to really do our homework to understand both the demographics and the cultural realities of the area before we imagine where movements would go. But I also think there's sort of an organic element here, that we have some apostolic people planted in some key places, and some of you may just need to step up into a place, a demographic, and say, I want to take this area, and I want to build a network. And we're still going to help. You understand that this little thing here is both a localized movement for Central Tampa, and it's also a headquarters for what is quickly becoming a global movement. So this particular space is both. And so we're going to continue, I am going to continue to work with movements everywhere. So we just keep meeting and learning from people all over the country and all over the world who are reading our manifesto, looking through our thinking and our strategy, and their hearts start racing. I just talked to Mark who's here from Minneapolis, and he's just like, Brian, when we were reading your stuff, we just had to stop and just be like, what is this we're reading? And what it is they're reading is their own heart. And what they're seeing is not something that we've created, but it's a note that God has struck in the world. And maybe we're one of the first people to put words to it, but it's a note that people recognize because they've been hearing it in their own hearts and in their own prayer. We're not recruiting people into a way of thinking. We are simply convening the people of God toward the next move of God. I do believe that is part of our calling and our role. But the truth is, we're not creating anything. It's something that God is already doing and saying to his people. That's why we feel this familial bond immediately with people who we don't even know. We're my sisters from New Jersey. Is Phyllis and... There we go. Okay. I mean, we just had this sweet fellowship in the box, a couple of hours ago. I mean, we just met. I barely know them, but it feels like family, So what is that? How is that even possible? And by the way, I don't feel that toward everyone I meet. You know that, right? I'm not even sure I like people. So what is that? That's supernatural. That's something God is doing. What does that even have to do with your question? What am I even talking about right now? No. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with each of these movements as they emerge, and as the apostolic people, and as you say, yeah, I want to take this space, we're going to work with you on your own timetable. So again, I'm not going to try to execute a master plan to plant a bunch of movements all at once. No, it has to be still God doing it. It has to be God calling people and God's timing, and we may wait for years to reach certain sections. But when you're ready, when God raises up those people, we need to be ready. And we need to say yes, yes. And we need to, have the infrastructure to support autonomous movements, not just microchurches, but movements being planted even locally. And not just nationally or globally, which we're doing, but even locally. That's the new wrinkle, the new nuance. Okay, here's what I want to do. I just want to take the last 15 minutes of the day with you. And I want to do something which I think will be a little awkward for a minute, but it actually will be very sweet and meaningful for all of us once we do it. I want us to kind of stand up, not yet, but I want us to stand up, and I want you to kind of form your little microchurch group. So it might just be 2 of you here right now. It might be 5 or 6 of you, not just yet. But thank you for your eagerness. I really appreciate that. So you'll stand, be in your little microchurches so we can see you as a group. And if you're alone or you just have an idea and don't have a microchurch yet, fake it. Just fall into a group and be like, what's up? I'm in your group now, And then what I want you to do is I want you to find another microchurch. Maybe even one you don't know well. And then we'll kind of, maybe I'll help or lead this process, but I just want you to sort of say, don't take a lot of time getting to know each other, but just sort of say who you are. And I want you to ask that group, even without knowing what to pray for, I I want you to ask those two other people or that other group, I want you to ask them to pray over your group. So your little group can form a little circle, and that other microchurch will pray a prayer of blessing and growth and development and intimacy with God over you. And guys, some of you have a lot of experience with this. Some of you have zero experience. I don't care. I want you to try. I want you to prophesy over that group. So you're like, oh my God, Brian, seriously? Yeah, so here's how that works. All I need you to do is just be quiet for a minute in your heart and just think, Lord, what do you want to say to these people? And then I want you to say it like that. I want you to say, I think the Lord wants you to hear this. You could be wrong. You could get it wrong. Doesn't matter. Just give it your best shot. I bet you God is going to use some of you to speak to that group, a word or something like that. So that's what I want, is I want us to pray, bless, and prophesy over each other. It's not fancy, nothing. There's no shaking or freaking out that's going to happen. We're just going to do that sort of divine word over the other group. Okay, so do it. Just go ahead and stand up in groups. And if you're separated from your crew, just kind of go find them. As soon as you've kind of found your little team, thank you. Look for someone else. Find another group. If you're the bigger group, go find a little group or something. Whoa, okay. All right, just share once you've found a group. And if you haven't found anybody yet, just join something. There's pockets everywhere. Just share real quick what you do, and then get to praying.